Hello everyone, Lytro Storm here, and today I'm going to be making a new What If. Well, actually, it's a continuation. You guys might remember that I did What If Total Drama Island had no teams. Well, it was super interesting and led to major changes in that season, plus you guys loved it, so I figured I'd do the next season, Total Drama Action. But what's going to be special about this series is that there will already be some things that are changed due to what changed in the Total Drama Island version of events. So I heavily recommend watching those two videos first, as they will be super important going forward. They'll be linked in the description and comments section. I also just want to remind you guys that I have started a channel membership system so you guys can support me with only $2.99 a month and also get access to awesome perks like early video uploads, because I know you guys want to see more content, and also community posts that are going to be exclusive. I'll reply to your comments more often, and you get your name read out at the end of the video. So if you have some extra change lying around and you want to support us, feel free to do so, but if not, then you can always support by liking and subscribing if you end up enjoying the video. Alright, so we should first address the major changes that would carry over into Total Drama Action from our previous parts. For one, Heather isn't bald since she got taken out of the competition right after the merge. She also wouldn't really be hated by Lindsay, so there's potential for them to strike up their old alliance once again. Jeff and Bridget also aren't together since they spent way less time with each other in canon. Instead, they're just flirting and building up that natural romance. This is very crucial for the first two episodes of Action. And last, Owen and Izzy's strange relationship would likely just take place off-screen at Playa de Losers unless you think that it was all a plan from Izzy to get further in the game. But since we're on rough ground at the start of Action anyway with them, due to Izzy calling herself Kaleidoscope and trying to date the animatronic monster, it's not really going to make much of a difference whether they have started their relationship beforehand or after this moment. Anyway, in episode 1, Bridget and Jeff would stick together, but since they're not making out, they don't get caught as quickly, but they do still get caught eventually. Bridget also isn't so easily dismissed by Lashana since she's not constantly making out with Jeff. But that's all for the first episode. Since there won't be any teams in the second episode, Chris says that anyone who escapes with the alien eggs will gain immunity. That whole scene with the scary alien noises being revealed to be Jeff and Bridget's lips is taken out since they're not making out. And also because they're not doing that, they join DJ, Duncan, Gwen, and Trent's little squad. Another interesting note is that since there was no divide over voting off Bridget last season, Duncan has no reason to dislike Jeff, and vice versa. Heather doesn't have to worry about her wig this time either. DJ sacrifices himself, and at the end, Chris drops the slime bomb onto the final 5. Luckily, Jeff knocks Bridge out of the way, allowing her to gain immunity with Trent and Gwen. And so we proceed to the votes with a really pointless episode if I'm being honest. We kinda removed a lot of the content, and I don't think it'd be filled with anything interesting. Since reward challenges are going to be pretty pointless with only one or a handful of people getting it, I've decided to just make this episode a single elimination. We'll then follow it up by making episode 4's reward challenge an elimination as well. Since Bridget and Jeff haven't put a target on their backs yet, the cast just kind of have to base their votes on who they dislike the most, and I really can't think of any reason as to why it wouldn't be Heather. She's not as hated as in canon, but she's still the most hated. It's really lame to cut her first, but like, who else is it gonna be? Also, Jeff and Bridget officially start their relationship from this point after Jeff saved her. For the next challenge, I'd say Chris still has the cast pull stuff up the hill, but the people who carry the most get an advantage in the next challenge. Owen probably wouldn't pull the trailer without a team to cheer him on, and DJ refused originally. Those are probably the only two who had a chance at pulling those, so that's out of the picture now. Basically, the advantage in the next part is just the ability to use anything they've carried up for their performance. And that's right, everyone has to play a role for the acting challenge. I'm gonna say the props they grabbed really don't matter too much, as there's no way for me to tell who'd be good at carrying them. You'd think people who aren't typically shown as strong wouldn't do well, but Harold carries the biggest piece of equipment alone. Meanwhile, Gwen struggles to hold a smaller piece, and Lindsay and Beth have to team up to pull a cart. So I'm just not really sure what to say here. It comes down to who can pull off the best performances. Since the biggest merge cast we've had is Islands 12 and we've got 13, I'm gonna say Chris is fine with only having one person win immunity, with one exception that if there are any temporary team challenges. That could be his big twist this season. Duncan wouldn't really put much effort without a team to force him to work, Izzy sucked canonically, and DJ went blank when acting in the ad in episode 3 of World Tour, so he's out. Jeff and Bridget, having just started their relationship, are now probably too focused on each other, so they wouldn't really do well either. Anyway, I think the real contenders for immunity are probably Justin and Harold. I'm just gonna say it's Harold though, as I think Justin might spend too much time on makeup or something. By this point, our alliances have kind of started forming. You've obviously got Trent, Gwen, and Lashana, Beth and Lindsay, and I think Duncan might put together the Guys Alliance 2.0, but recruits Justin instead of Jeff, as he's a bit preoccupied with Bridget. so it's him, DJ, Owen, and Justin. Harold has immunity, so his first big target is off the table. Luckily, Jeff and Bridget have started to become slightly annoying with their kissing, and maybe they even messed up someone's focus when prepping for the challenge. Plus, if the guys can get rid of Bridget, they might be able to get Jeff back into the alliance. And so with that, Bridget gets cut with Jeff barely scraping by. I really can't see anyone else uniting on the votes this early in the game, and that's all I really have in terms of who I think would be the biggest target. The votes are kind of the biggest issue when it comes to these no team versions, so you kind of have to bear with me. So once again, Bridget gets cut super early, but at least it's the same placement she got in canon. Now we can move on to episode 4. We'll have to change this challenge a little bit up in order to make it fit our merged cast. I'll say the best surfer in the first challenge gets an advantage in the second one. Obviously in canon, Duncan had the best performance, so he's definitely taking the victory. Jeff and Izzy might be comparable since Jeff has experience surfing and Izzy is just really athletic, but Jeff is currently sad about Bridget being eliminated and Izzy also has her wacky moments, so Duncan has the highest likelihood of winning here consistently. For the sandcastle challenge, everyone would have to build their own, with Duncan having a crucial 30-minute lead. Since he currently possesses a hefty advantage and a big alliance, meaning he doesn't necessarily even need immunity, he later decides to ditch the challenge with Gwen to break Chef's bus like in canon. Beth had the best idea with paper mache in the original story, so I'm gonna say she takes the win here. Seeing Beth's craftiness and her friendship bracelets being given out, Justin approaches her like he did in the original story. He wants to be her friend as well, which basically means an alliance, so we can see he's kind of plotting against Duncan in this version of events. He's with the guys, but he's building up his own alliance as well. There is no need for a tiebreaker challenge here as we don't have teams, so Beth is declared the winner. In terms of who gets voted off, as I did say episode 4 would be an elimination challenge due to us not having a double in episode 2, it's tough to say. Once again, teammates blaming each other for things just doesn't do the job as well here. I'd imagine the guys would want to vote off Harold though, since they don't like him. However, Izzy is a big threat, whereas Harold isn't, especially for Duncan who can see that Owen likes her. So he opts to get rid of her, once again isolating a guy to make them more loyal. The guys seem kinda hesitant about this, but ultimately comply. However, this leads to Jeff finally putting all the pieces together that Duncan was behind Bridge getting booted. Episode 5 starts with the horse challenge, which works for no teams. Gwen, Harold, Duncan, Lindsay, and Beth land on the horse. Without Heather to pull Lashana off, it's possible she also lands too. Jeff is up in the air as this challenge really isn't skill based. I'll say he isn't able to make it though, as it helps for the next challenge. Owen grabs the horse and jumps on it after failing, which Chris counts originally, but the circumstances for the next challenge are a bit different now, so I'm not going to this time. The people who succeeded at jumping would be the cattle, and the people who failed would be the cowboys. This might seem a little bit backwards, but I'll explain. The cowboys who catch one of the cattle get immunity, and the cattle that avoid capture do too. It means that statistically, the cattle are more likely to get immunity since there are more of them than the cowboys. Jeff, DJ, Trent, and Owen would be the cowboys here. Trent refuses to catch Gwen like he did in the show. Owen is just bad at this, and DJ is probably too nice. But Jeff has a serious vendetta against Duncan now, so he confronts him in front of everyone. Duncan plays it straight with them, saying that he got rid of Bridget in order to get Jeff back into the fold. It's a good strategy. Jeff gets angry, letting loose and catching Duncan as he tries to avoid capture. This secures his immunity, with most of the other cast having it now as well. Only Duncan, Trent, Owen, and DJ do not. This one's obviously a little bit imbalanced, but it's almost identical to the canon challenge, so I'm okay with it. I think this is where the true beginning of Trent and Gwen's spiral starts, so luckily Trent doesn't have to worry about getting broken up with or going home. At least not yet. But it's obvious that Duncan does, as karma bites him back after the reveal of what he did. It's very important to lose someone so integral to the season, but that's just the reality. Speaking of reality, without Jeff, the Aftermath show is going to be a little bit different. Bridget could be the only host, but I think it's way more interesting if we had someone else with her. Our only options are the rejects not returning for this season, and our 3 eliminated contestants so far: Duncan, Izzy, or Heather. And what a perfect way to give her more screen time after being eliminated so early. You force Bridget and her to work together, despite Bridget being extremely nice and Heather being a total drama farm. Plus, she was the first eliminated, so the placements of the hosts are the same as in canon when Jeff and Bridget got eliminated together. So anyway, Heather and Bridget interrogate Duncan and Izzy in the first Aftermath episode. Izzy would mostly be the same, since she has the same placement, but Duncan obviously would have some new content, with Bridget disliking him for getting her booted, and Heather thinking he's a good strategist. Courtney and Duncan would also reunite here, with Courtney insulting him for not playing hard enough to win. but she's talking to her lawyers, so they'll fix things soon. Going into the next episode, it's important to note that DJ and Chef's alliance would still be taking place here, but it hasn't really mattered up to this point, so I haven't yet mentioned it. The cast is kind of happy they voted out Duncan before the prison challenge, since he would have been an issue to compete against. The first part of the challenge would have the cast pair up. One person from each pair will be locked up and forced to eat whatever the first person made. If the eater pukes, the person who made the food gets a point, but if they eat everything, they get a point instead. The pairs would be kind of random here, so I'm just gonna do what I think would be best for content. We've kind of got our three main alliances going on here: Lashana, Gwen, Trent, and Harold, DJ, Justin, Jeff, and Owen, and Beth and Lindsay. So we can just kind of split the roles easily among the alliances, which makes it easier to map out. So for instance, Beth and Lindsay will be a pair with Lindsay eating and Beth making the food. Gwen and Trent will be a pair with Gwen eating, Lashana and Harold with Lashana eating, DJ and Jeff with Jeff eating, and lastly Justin and Owen with Owen eating. I think Justin would ask Beth for some help grossing Owen out, as it's a pretty hefty task. Plus, it helps him score some more points with Beth, which is what he's looking to do. This leads to her spitting out her retainer into his food after helping him. DJ puts Mama Spice into his dish, accidentally giving Jeff the win, since he loves the food. Lindsay barfs since Gwen said she does it super easily. Harold refuses to make Lashana eat anything bad, but she ends up barfing after seeing Owen spit out Beth's retainer and Beth putting it back in. Owen obviously still wins, and Trent also refuses to make Gwen eat anything bad, which is another stepping stone in the throwing challenges arc. This leads Jeff, Beth, Harold, Owen, and Gwen as the winners of the first challenge, so the 5 of them receive shovels to dig their way out of prison. Chris then reveals that their partner has to push them in the cart to the dig site, and then the person with the shovel must dig. I'm sure someone would ask, then how is the shovel an advantage if they're all partnered up? And Chris would just say that he doesn't get paid to write the show. But the winning duo both get immunity. Justin realizes he must now push Owen, which sets him back greatly. Lashana should also be able to push Harold pretty well. Lindsay was somehow capable of pushing Owen and the rest of the grips, so she'd be able to easily get Beth through pretty quick. DJ and Trent don't have much issue either, but DJ is stronger, so I'd say him and Jeff arrive at the dig site first. After arriving, our duos dig hard in order to make it out, but once again, Owen causes another major setback for Justin as he doesn't have much stamina and he's the one digging. But Owen refuses to give up the shovel, leaving Justin pretty much stranded. Now, we've got one factor that should be mentioned: Izzy's return. In canon, she showed up in the Screaming Gaffer's tunnel, but since there are now 5 tunnels, I've got no clue which one she would end up at. The one factor I do have to consider is that the Gaffers were losing to the Grips, so because of that, they were the furthest behind. This means the only real way I can decide where Izzy shows up is by judging which duo is losing the hardest. And given the fact I've mentioned Justin and Owen's complications twice now, I think it'd be them. However, Izzy didn't get the Gaffers to the end fast enough in canon, so I'm gonna assume she still fails here. Since Lindsay and Beth are kinda dumb, they'd probably get sidetracked in some way for a little bit. Harold likely isn't that well built for digging, which holds Lashana back. And Gwen and Trent seem the most solid, but Gwen would be questioning Trent's weird behavior as of late and why he's throwing challenges for her. This leaves DJ and Jeff, who already had the biggest lead anyway, so I think it's pretty fair to give them the win here. And so now all we're left with is the vote, which now features Izzy. Nobody really has a target at this point except for Justin. It should be pretty obvious that Omar has not really been on his good side recently. With the fart machine Owen proved to be at the beginning of the episode, Justin should have no trouble getting Jeff and DJ to be on board to remove him. He also has Lindsay and Beth, whom he can easily get to join the vote. This will be crucial for Justin, especially because Izzy just returned and likes Owen a lot. So Owen is eliminated, probably with no speech this time. Episode 8 isn't an elimination challenge, so it doesn't really matter. Lashana would still win the reward, but this time she does not need to fake cry, as she's the only possible candidate for the reward because there's no teams. For the next episode, we've got the horror movie challenge, but since there are no teams, I think it'd be cooler to make it kind of like a free-for-all, almost like episode 20. We get the same scenarios like the bathroom, the couch, the forest, but now everyone has to try to scare someone at least once. Then the people with the most scares get placed into the craft center, while the others who failed the previous part scare them. Last one standing wins. DJ has Chef helping him a lot during this episode, so we definitely have a huge lead, but when placed in the craft center, he'd be the one being scared. So Chef really can't do much to help him. Justin seemed pretty determined to be the killer in the challenge, so I think he could have potential to make it to the final round. And obviously, Izzy should be the absolute MVP of the first challenge, but she does seem to be just as easily scared as the rest of the grips in the final part. Overall, this doesn't really matter too much, as I think DJ would still eliminate himself. The first challenge of the next episode wouldn't have anyone get cracked by Chef. Izzy would be the only possible target, but since she doesn't have to stay behind to argue with or help Owen, she just moved to the end of the challenge before Chef pulls out his book. Since we have 9 people, Chris decides to allow teams of 3 into each submarine room. The top 3 fastest people from the first challenge get the combination for the lock. On the gaffer side, we saw Heather, Duncan, and Lashana close to the end at first. And on the grips, Justin, Lindsay, and Beth. However, Duncan and Heather aren't here this time, so we can scratch them off. Lashana gets hit off her platform, so she's gone too. That leaves Justin, Lindsay, and Beth, but we do need to keep our new characters in mind. Trent, Gwen, and Jeff weren't here canonically. Trent and Gwen would likely be helping each other a lot, and Jeff is pretty athletic. Izzy also wouldn't be held back by Owen, so it's possible she locks in more. But I'm sure Trent would take a hit for Gwen at some point, setting himself back in order to get her the win. So we'll put her on the board. Since Justin was first for the grips, I'll slap him on there too. And since Lindsay was second for her team, I'll also make her take it. Keep in mind that without Owen, Lindsay and Justin wouldn't have even been stuck in that hole, making them even faster. So the top 3 with the advantage are Gwen, Justin, and Lindsay. The second team would likely feature Izzy, Jeff, and Beth, with Lashana, Harold, and Trent capping off at the end. Lindsay and Justin still ruin the paper by fighting over it, making their advantage useless and leaving Gwen as the only sane person on her team. I think Harold's bendy straws still come out on top for his team, giving them the reward. The next challenge has another trio scenario where I think they'd be divided more by choice. So Gwen and Trent would take Jeff, Beth and Lindsay take Izzy as they're starting to dislike Justin, leaving Justin to sneak into Lashana and Harold's duo. This upsets Harold as Lashana thinks Justin is attractive. Obviously, Izzy messes up for her trio by not making the explosion controls, so that leaves Harold and his pals, or Gwen, Trent, and Jeff. I think Gwen should have some sort of idea what to do given her artistic goth personality. Jeff is kinda crazy since he's a party boy, and Trent is relatively smart, at least in Island he was. So it should balance out in a way that doesn't really work for Harold's trio. He's kind of all they've got going for them, as Lashana was clueless in canon and Justin was lazy. This gives Gwen, Trent, and Jeff the trunk, which they must defend from everyone else. Whichever trio has the trunk by the end gains immunity. Since nobody got injured by Chef, the blendies would never be made, so Lashana should be at full capacity this time around. Lindsay would still be bossing Beth and Izzy around, with Harold fighting for control over his trio as well. He lashes out at Justin for trying to one-up him, but they eventually put their differences aside to try and win. However, since Harold really only succeeds with the help of Lashana's farts, I don't see them getting the win here. Lindsay and her team also failed canonically, and I think Jeff, Trent, and Gwen just work better together. So they'd be able to keep the chest or take it back by the end of the day. I still think Justin would confide in Izzy why he's not getting any play with Lindsay and Beth anymore, which leads to her saying that he's not cute. This would probably happen just after the challenge, or at some point when Izzy and Justin end up at the same place. This moment causes Justin to gather votes against Izzy, sending her home. He's able to do this by swooning Lashana and earning Harold's respect for putting the challenge first, though Justin didn't really think there was a chance of winning. He just needed new allies now that Lindsay and Beth are kinda fading. But he also solves that problem by the end of the episode by debuting the hair flip, making Izzy an even easier target. And with that, we've covered just about half of Total Drama Action, so I think we can go ahead and end this part off here. Like Island, this season is really long, so it kind of needs to get split up into 2 parts, so definitely be on the lookout for that. As I said at the beginning of this video, if you guys want to support the channel, you can do so by becoming a channel member for only $2.99, where you get access to awesome perks like early videos, priority comment replies, your name read out at the end of the video, as well as exclusive community polls. So I highly recommend you do so if you have the spare money, and if not, you can always like and subscribe if you ended up enjoying this video. But as always, tell me if you liked this part, tell me what you think will happen next, comment your requests for future videos, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, have a great day.